My in-laws laughed at my dress. Then the host introduced me as the fashion brand's silent partner. Claire stood frozen just inside the grand ballroom, the echo of her mother-in-law's sharp laughter still ringing in her ears. That light, mocking chuckle wasn't the only thing piercing her skin tonight. Whispers slithered through the crowd like cold fingers. Who let her dress up like that? Absolutely gaudy. That fabric looks like a bad costume. Every cruel comment stabbed deeper. The sea of glittering celebrities and flashing cameras swirled around her, but Claire felt like invisible glass wrapped tight around her chest, squeezing the breath out. Her dress was daring, no doubt, an original design she had poured every ounce of her soul into. A sweeping midnight blue gown that clung to her in sharp geometric cuts, edges sliced like shards of starlight, daring and raw. It shimmered unpredictably, catching the light with wild glimmers, flickering like a secret. But beneath the fab, each word echoed like a warning. You don't belong here. Claire's heart thudded violently. How had her passion for dressmaking, the fire that had kept her alive through lonely nights and endless stitches, become a punchline? The gala's opulence pressed down around her, the crystal chandeliers dripping like frozen waterfalls, the scent of expensive perfume masking the tension, thickening the air. Somewhere, a jazz lullaby hummed low, but it felt distant, irrelevant. She was ready to slip away, fade into the shadows, disappear. But then, her name cut through the murmurs like thunder. Ladies and gentlemen, the host's voice boomed over the microphone, sharp and certain. Let me introduce Claire Bennett, the silent partner behind the masterpiece you see tonight. The fashion station that's been stealing the spotlight? That's her brainchild concealed in plain sight. A stunned hush slammed the crowd. Faces turned, eyes widened, jaw dropped. The cruel laughter stopped midair. Reply. She wasn't a forgotten hanger-on. Claire was the pulse behind the genius collection they'd admired all evening. Yet the shift in the room felt electric and dangerous. Her mother-in-law's smile vanished, replaced by a shadow of cold venom on perfect lips. The queen of past runways, the queen of icy grace, was gearing up for war. Behind that poised mask lurked ruthless intent. To drag Claire out, expose the ugly truths buried in their family's glaring legacy. And if that wasn't enough, a familiar figure she'd hoped to never see again slipped silently through the crowd. An old rival, a ghost from her past who smelled blood in the water. With their return, Claire's fragile triumph suddenly felt like a tightrope stretched over an abyss. The night spun on, dazzling but deadly. Claire's footsteps faltered as she realized this was no longer just a fashion gala. It was a battleground, a fight for respect, survival, and maybe, just maybe, her soul. Who was lurking in the shadows? Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content that's coming. And since you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know each incredible person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. The murmurs rose, a low buzz vibrating through the air. Claire's heart raced in tandem with the shudder of the crowd, an unpredictable wave crashing over her. She was the center of it all, the moment seizing her tightly. She stood tall, shifting her weight as nervous energy coursed through her. This was her debut, her moment to shine. But her trip. Fear and anger were evident, a bubbling cauldron barely contained under her polished facade. The influencer beside her exchanged glances with her sister-in-law. both eyes twinkling with delight and malice. Words like cheap and unworthy echoed in Claire's head. Right then, she knew the fight was just beginning. The host's voice rang out, commanding attention. This gown symbolizes creativity and courage. Cheers erupted from the crowd. Flashes lit the ballroom. Claire's fingers gripped the fabric of her dress tighter, the weight of expectation pressing harder than ever. But just when the applause seemed to drown out the whispers, a loud crash cut through the chatter like glass shattering. A figure stumbled forward, arms flailing wildly. Claire squinted, unsure of what she was seeing. Was it even real? This old friend, a rival she had thought long gone, now stood in the center of the ballroom. Annalise. She looked disheveled, hair flying messily around her, eyes wild. "You need to know!" All eyes turned. Gasps replaced applause. The warmth of the crowd morphed into icy disbelief, and tension thickened with every heartbeat. "What are you doing here?" Claire's throat hitched, part shock and part dread. Annalise had been her fiercest competitor, the one who had dazzled audiences and stole awards. "You need to listen to me," Annalise growled, advancing closer, panic leaking from every pore. "Your husband, he's not who you think he is." The words were like a slap, echoing through the ballroom. Claire's breath caught, her world tilting dangerously on its axis. Murmurs erupted again, but this time they were sharper, filled with curiosity and judgment. Questions swirled like a storm around her. "What?" Claire gasped, the tightening grip of trepidation curling around her heart. "Just listen," Annalise insisted, desperation now in her eyes. "He was part of a scheme, a fashion scandal. It involves your brand and a lot of people." The crowd shifted, moving closer in collective intrigue, eyes darting between Claire and Annalise, unable to look away. Shock painted all their faces, a mass of whispers sharpening at the excitement of scandal. But it wasn't just Annalise's words that unsettled Claire. Memories of hushed conversations with her husband resurfaced. Details she had brushed aside suddenly flickered, pulsing and vivid. Truths she hadn't seen because she didn't want to see. Doubts that had been tucked away swelled. Then a hand gripped Claire's shoulder, her husband's familiar touch. But his grip felt different, cold and suffocating. "Enough," he snapped, voice low yet filled with authority, each syllable hard as iron. The glint in his eyes was all wrong. This was nothing like the man who had promised her dreams. She swiveled around, heart pounding, ready for confrontation. But before Claire could respond, the room dimmed, the chandeliers flickering as a distant crash echoed from somewhere deep within the gala. Gasps shot through the silence. What was happening? Everything spiraled, unraveling before her. The laughter, the cheers, the validation she thought she'd earned, all turned to chaos. Annalise's ominous smile cut through the noise. It wasn't just a revelation. It was a warning of a greater storm. A storm that threatened to sweep Claire's world away, leaving nothing but wreckage in its wake. Claire's pulse raced as she faced the truth that had come crashing in. Could she trust anyone now? What would she do next, with everything at stake? The future hung in a delicate balance, and the ground felt unsteady beneath her feet. Claire's heart raced, a drumbeat echoing in her ears. Annalise's words clanged like a bell in her mind, sending shockwaves of confusion and fear through her. The glittering crowd buzzed with excitement, their eyes darting between Claire and the chaos unfolding around her. Her husband's grip on her shoulder tightened, his voice low and commanding. But all she could focus on was Annalise's frantic eyes. "What do you mean?" Claire demanded, her voice trembling. She felt the weight of stares behind her, like a tidal wave threatening to pull her under. "What do you know about my husband?" Annalise stepped closer, urgency radiating from her. "He's involved in something dangerous. I didn't want to believe it, but it's true. Your brand, they're using it to cover up their mess. I couldn't let you stay in the dark. You have to take care." "What are you talking about?" Claire's breath hitched, a lump swelling in her throat. A mix of anger and fear flared in her chest. "How could you think that?" Before Annalise could respond, a shattering crash echoed through the ballroom. The chandelier above trembled, crystal shards raining down like the final notes of a haunting symphony. Gasps erupted from the crowd, and for a moment, time stilled. But not for long. Panic surged, people ducked and scattered, their frightened murmurs turning the air electric. "What's happening? Did you see that?" Claire's world tilted again. The harsh lighting flickered, plunging then into shadow and chaos. She felt the tremor beneath her feet, the frantic movement of bodies around her. And just as quickly, she caught a glimpse of her husband's face. The calculated calm was gone, replaced by something colder, something darker. "Stay close," he barked, his eyes darting toward the entrance, a tension thrumming through his voice. New figures lurked in the doorway, faces cloaked in obscurity, but energy sharp as daggers. And then it happened. A figure fell from the shadows, an old man in a tailored suit, clutching a bloodied handkerchief to his forehead. He stumbled into view, eyes wild. "This has gone too far. We need to stop the—" The room gasped, silence smothering the moment. Claire's heart raced again, but this time it was fear that threatened to swallow her whole. "Do you know him?" she whispered, turning to her husband, but he was already stepping forward, a mask of shock slipping over his features. "What are you doing here, Graham?" His voice was tight, strained. The crowd tensed, their curiosity hanging thick as smoke. Who was this man? Just then, Graham's gaze landed on Claire with a sharp intensity. "It's worse than you think. This dance you're part of isn't just fashion. It's a cover for something hidden, something dark." His words raced out, panic pitching higher with every syllable. Claire's stomach rolled. Cold sweat dripped down her back. She glanced at Annalise, whose face was a series of raw emotions. Fear, doubt, and a glimmer of vindication flickered across her features. And in that moment, everything she thought she knew shattered. "What do you mean?" Claire breathed, desperately grasping for stability amidst the tremors of her reality. Graham's voice dropped. "Your husband was never who you thought he was. The business, the lies, it's connected to, you're in danger, Claire." A chill wound around Claire's heart as the crowded ballroom spun and twisted with new intrigue. Reality morphed into a nightmare as the weight of truth came crashing down. She had to believe Graham, didn't she? But her husband's face, taut in desperation, stirred a lingering doubt that clutched at her throat. "Stop!" she shouted, her voice ready to break. "Tell me the truth!" But before anyone could answer, the lights flickered out completely, plunging the ballroom into an eerie dark. A collective gasp rose, fear morphing into a frenzy. Something terrible was about to unfold. A trap? A revelation? Claire's heart galloped wildly. What was really happening? Who could she trust now? Shadows danced around her, and she didn't know if she could escape the storm swirling within. The lights flickered out, plunging the ballroom into darkness. Claire's heart raced, fear flooding her senses. Panic wrapped its tight grip around her chest, and she could barely breathe. Shouts filled the air, a mixture of confusion and dread that echoed like a siren's wail. Footsteps thundered around her, as she grasped for something solid, someone to anchor her in the chaos. The crowd jostled, bodies moving in frenzied disorder, and Claire felt small, lost among the towering shadows. Her husband's grip slipped from her shoulder, replaced by panic she couldn't quite decipher. "Claire, stay calm," he shouted, but the urgency in his voice felt hollow, as though he were trying to convince himself more than her. "Graham!" someone yelled from the darkness, their voice frantic. "What's happening? We need to get out! Shut it, all of you!" Her husband snapped back, and she shivered. That wasn't the reassuring tone she was familiar with. The fear creeping through her veins turned cold. Did he know more than he was saying? A flicker of light suddenly brightened the room, revealing scattered bodies scrambling for the exits, faces twisted in fear. Claire's heart sank as she caught Annalise's eyes, wide with realization. The truth of Graham's warnings danced between them, a dark thread woven through their frantic breaths. Then, in a moment of clarity, Claire turned toward the noise, searching for an answer. She needed the truth before it drowned her. "Graham!" she shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. "Tell me what's going on!" But before her husband could respond, an explosion ripped through the air, shattering the fragile atmosphere. The entrance doors blew open, splintering the elegant frame. The vibrant glass crystals overhead refracted lights like shooting stars. A figure stepped through the smoke, illuminated by a swirling mix of colored lights. It was a tall silhouette, draped in shadow, a mask obscuring their features. Claire's heart leapt into her throat. "Who are you?" Before they could answer, the masked figure lifted an arm, and a flash of blue light erupted, illuminating the chaos around them. It felt like the world had paused. The only sound was the heavy thud of Claire's heartbeat. The crowd froze, eyes wide, breaths held. Shadows danced across their faces, horror mingled with fascination. Who knew what secrets lurked beneath the mask? Then the figure spoke, their voice distorted but clear, cutting through the tension. "Claire Bennett, you've been played." A twist of confusion gripped Claire's throat as she caught movement from the corner of her eye. Graham stepped forward, panic morphing into ferocity. "Take one step closer, and you'll regret it." But the figure only laughed, and it felt colder than the October wind outside. "You think you have the upper hand, but you're just a pawn in a game far beyond your understanding." Claire's stomach churned. What kind of game? What pieces were being moved around in her life? And then, as if someone had flipped a switch, the lights surged back, blinding brightness flooding the ballroom. The masked figure stood there, an ominous presence among the chaos. When the light cleared, Claire's blood ran cold. One of her husband's business partners stood beside the figure, a wicked grin stretching across his face. "Surprise!" he shouted, arms wide, and the smirk turned to a sneer. "Welcome to the real show, Claire." The laughter that followed sent icy shards through her heart. It wasn't just a gala anymore. It was a masquerade ball where everything she thought she knew was unraveling. "Tell me you didn't," Claire breathed, hope slipping away as dread flooded in. "Trust is a fragile." The masked figure replied, their eyes glinting ominously. "You've been blind, Claire, but the truth waits in the shadows." Her heart raced wildly, every fiber in her being screaming. What did this mean for her? What had she done, and how deep did the lies run? Questions thrummed in her mind as the crowd buzzed, but one thing was clear. Everything had just spiraled into darkness. And staring into that darkness, Claire felt a chill she couldn't shake. What had she stepped into? The storm was just beginning, and she was right in the eye of it. The ballroom buzzed with panic. Claire stood frozen. The world around her blurred into chaotic shapes. She could hear the masked figure's voice slicing through the confusion. "Claire Bennett, You've been played. But all she could focus on was the chilling look on her husband's face. Graham, what is happening? She urged, each word spilling out raw and frantic. The crowd was shifting like waves, pushing against each other, a tidal rush of fear and intrigue. Graham looked at her, eyes darkening. They're just trying to mess with you. Don't listen to them. His voice was quick, almost desperate, but Claire felt a tug of doubt. Why was he so defensive? Before she could respond, the masked figure laughed, a cold, echoing sound that sent shivers down her spine. Oh, but it's too late for that. You're already in the game, dear Claire. What game? She shot back, anger bubbling. She hated the way he spoke, like everything was already decided. Then a flicker of movement caught her eye. Out of the haze, another person rushed forward, arms waving, face twisted in desperation. It was an older woman, her features pinched and frantic. Stop! Claire, you have to know the truth. It's all connected. Claire squinted, trying to see. Who are you? She didn't recognize her, but the urgency rang through the din of the crowd. I'm your mother! The words dropped like a bomb, silencing the crowd. Claire's heart stopped. Everyone was staring. No, that can't be. Yes, I'm here to warn you. You're in danger, Claire. The panicked woman lunged forward again, desperation etched across her face. Your husband, Claire, don't listen! Graham yelled, voice shaking with heat. Claire turned to him, disbelief crashing over her like a wave. Is it true? She shot back, eyes narrowed. Are you hiding something from me? I'm not hiding anything. He clenched his jaw. The tension thickened, wrapping around them. But then she caught something flickering in his eyes, an honesty, perhaps, that made her skin prickle. You can't trust them. Graham insisted, his voice rising. This is a diversion. They're just trying to ruin you. The crowd leaned closer, their collective breath caught, waiting for the explosion. But why would she lie? Claire pressed, searching for answers. Confusion and anger twisted inside her, churning memories from their life together. Could her mother really be here? Because they're all part of it, Claire, the older woman cried. The business, the lies, it's all a facade. Your husband has enemies, and they're trying to use you to get to him. With each word, she turned back to Graham, who looked like a caged animal, trapped and angry. Enough of this, he shouted, stepping toward the masked figure, voice trembling with power. This isn't your show. Suddenly, another explosion ripped through the room, this time sounding like a gunshot. The crowd gasped collectively, a wave of shock. People screamed, scattering like leaves in the wind. Claire's breath hitched, panic igniting in her chest. Graham spun back to Claire, eyes wide. We have to go! No! What are you hiding from me? Claire yelled, desperate for answers. But before he could reply, the masked figure weaponized chaos, the tension snapping as they thrust their arm forward again, revealing a concealed blaster, its metallic surface gleaming ominously. There's more at stake than you know, Bennett. And then the lights flickered violently, and in that instant of darkness, a shot rang out. Everything froze. Claire felt the fear wash over her like ice. The figure stood unyielding, tension thick in the air, as the crowd erupted into chaos again. Screams rang out again, shouts of confusion mixing with horror. Graham turned sharply, trying to shield Claire with his body. But in the blinding chaos, something felt wrong. It was that look. Panic, fear, something darker. Whatever you think you know, it's all a lie, the masked figure shouted. And that's when Claire's heart dropped, the world blurring. In that instant, everything changed. The chaos spun around them. Claire's world cracked further. She didn't know who to trust as the smoke swirled, shadows deepening. As the first light extinguished, She saw a figure falling to the ground. Claire's breath caught. Was it Graham? No, someone else. And then the realization hit harder than any bullet could. Is this all a setup? She whispered, horror dawning as the truth bled into her vision. Who are you, really? She called into the chaos, the question hanging in the air, heavy as lead. But nobody could hear her now. Not above the screams, the sounds of the trail swirling around her. Everything she knew was dissolving into darkness. And in that moment, Claire's heart raced, not with pride, but with fear of the unknown she was plunged into. She was just trying to survive, but everything was falling apart. Was anyone safe? Would she find out what was real and who she could trust before it swallowed her whole? The chaos swept around Claire like a storm, pounding waves of fear crashing against her. She could hardly process the sight of the figure in a mask, half illuminated by the glaring lights. Someone's in danger, the masked voice rang out. But Claire felt the weight of Graham's urgency pressing in. The way he stood, tense, ready to pounce, it filled her with a mix of dread and hope. Is it true? She forced out, desperation flooding her voice. Her heart raced against her ribcage. Memories of laughter, stolen moments together, and whispered dreams gnawed at her, urging her to believe. Claire, he said, his tone sharper than she'd ever heard. Just trust me. We need to get out of here now. And just as the words left his lips, the ballroom erupted into chaos again. Bodies lurched forward, desperate for escape. Claire turned, eyes darting through the crowd. Then she saw Annalise. The panic on her rival's face shone through the confusion. But in that brief moment, Claire remembered the bond they once shared as friends. Why was she here now? It didn't make sense. It's not safe, Annalise yelled, pushing closer. You have to listen. Just as Claire opened her mouth to speak, the lights flickered again. Chilling darkness swept over them. A sickening, heavy silence came crashing down. This time, it felt deeper, like a hand squeezing tight around her throat. Then came the flash. A sudden burst of light shot from the back of the ballroom, illuminating a figure rushing toward them. It was her sister-in-law, Mia, her expression wild. Claire! Graham! She was panting, every breath a struggle. You have to run! They're coming for you, for all of us! Who? Claire's heart raced, her thoughts colliding. Before Mia could answer, the masked figure lunged forward, grabbing Claire's hand with surprising strength. No, don't let him take you, they shouted, a surge of panic flooding their voice. Claire's instinct kicked in. She yanked her hand free, eyes darting between Graham and the masked figure. What's going on? Who are you? Don't! Trust them! Graham's voice was raw, a sharp plea cutting through the chaos. Mia, why are you here? Claire asked, the urgency mounting. What truth was unfolding? Mia took a step closer, frustration filling her face. I didn't want to believe it, Claire, but Graham isn't who you think he is. A sudden crash erupted from the back door, and the crowd screamed, a wave of terror surging forth. People dove for cover, scrambling against each other, fear morphing the room into a tight knot of panic. What do you mean? Claire shouted, but Mia pressed on. Her words a desperate plea. I found something, plans, criminal plans. He's involved in something far worse. It's not just about fashion. It's a cover for something bigger, something illegal. You have to believe me. Claire's breath hitched, realization striking like lightning. Truth bombarded her, knocking her off balance. Graham's eyes glinted, shadowed danger lurking behind the surface. Enough, he roared, but his anger fell flat against the weight of Mia's words. Claire, the masked figure yelled, pointing toward the entrance. You're not safe here. They'll come for you. And just as they spoke, the door burst open, A surge of black-clad figures poured in. They were armed, faces concealed, moving swiftly and purposefully. Instinctively, Claire took a step back, colliding with Graham. "No!" he shouted, a flash of rage flickering across his face. The moment sent ice racing down her spine. His expression morphed, realization dawning in his eyes. Panic, now a familiar friend. In a heartbeat, secrets unraveled. Claire felt the world shift beneath her, and it all clicked into place. "You were behind it all," she whispered, breathless. With her heart racing, her gaze locked on Graham, she suddenly understood. This was a trap designed for her. Then, in one swift motion, the masked figure turned and ripped their mask off, revealing their identity. Claire's breath caught like glass shattering. It was someone she never expected, someone she trusted. "Why?" Claire gasped, the betrayal slamming into her like a tidal wave. The crowd screamed, but in that moment, the room faded to nothing but cold disbelief. As chaos erupted again, Claire found herself facing the very person she thought would protect her. Everything she believed shattered in an instant. She couldn't breathe. The storm was just beginning, and all she could do was watch as the walls of her world crumbled. Would she survive the truth? Claire stood there, heart hammering in her chest. As the masked figure she thought she knew, the world felt like it was slipping through her fingers. This couldn't be happening. Her mind raced through memories, but they all blurred into confusion. "Why?" she whispered, taking a shaky step backward, her voice cracking with disbelief. "Why would you betray me?" The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. But before the figure could respond, chaos erupted around them. The crowd was in full panic mode. Faces streaked with horror. Voices mingling in a cacophony of screams. People shoved against each other, desperate to escape the suffocating tension. Claire's gaze darted back to Graham, his anger simmering just beneath the surface. "Get out of here, now!" he shouted, pushing her toward the side exit. But Claire's legs felt heavy. She couldn't just run. Not when everything started to unravel here. And then, just as the masked figure opened their mouth to speak, the lights flickered again. This time, the bulbs exploded, bright flashes blinding her for a split second. Claire shielded her eyes, heart racing, when another gunshot rang through the room. It felt like time stopped. Was this real? She felt the cold grip of fear tightening around her throat. As the smoke swirled, a figure emerged from the haze, fists raised and face resolute. It was another of Graham's partners, but this one was different, determined, angry. "You're all being played!" he yelled, pointing at Claire, Annalise, and the now revealed figure. "Just like I was!" "What?" Claire's breath caught, a pressure building inside her chest. The room felt eerily silent, and for a moment, all eyes turned to him. "We need to tell her the truth," he continued, voice echoing. "The fashion line, it's just a cover for laundering money, and it's all tied to the family. Ties of blood." It felt like a punch to her gut. Suddenly, it all started to click. Glances exchanged in shadowy corners, whispered meetings Graham had brushed off. "Stop!" Graham shouted, eyes blazing. "This is a trap. Don't listen to him." But Claire was already piecing things together. "How can I trust anything you say, Graham?" Each word slipped out shaky, her trust crumbling around her. A deep rumble shook the ground beneath them. Someone screamed from the back of the room, and then the door they thought was secure crashed open, revealing a flood of figures in black. They moved with precision, storming in, eyes scanning. "Quick!" her sister-in-law Mia yelled, pulling Claire. "They've come for you. We have to go now." Claire clutched Mia's arm, confusion swirling. "What is happening?" She felt dizzy, as if the walls were closing in. "Your husband, it's worse than you know." Mia's voice was frantic. But more panic surged when Claire realized their other family members were missing. Where was her mother-in-law? Graham's face went pale. "You're not safe here. You need to trust me," he insisted. But another loud boom echoed, sending everyone into a frenzy. Suddenly, Claire felt an icy rush. "Wait!" She pulled away from Mia, and the chaotic environment dimmed into frightening clarity. "There's a connection, isn't there? You all wanted this. You wanted me to be part of their plan." And just like that, the masked figure stepped forward, eyes narrowed. "You think I set you up? The real threat is within your own home." "Enough of this!" Graham bellowed. "Get out of my way!" And then something unimaginable happened. A sudden explosion tore through the side of the ballroom. The windows shattered, and glass rained down around them. In the midst of the chaos, Graham staggered forward, reaching for Claire. "Stay close!" But as he lunged, another figure emerged from the smoke. A figure Claire recognized, one she never thought she'd see again. The room spun. It was Claire's own father, face stern and set, emerging from the shadows. "Claire," he shouted, eyes full of unspoken urgency. "We have to go, now." Her heart sank. Everything she thought she knew crashed around her. How could her father be here? What part had he played in all this? She felt the tightness in her chest rise again. Each question spiraled in her mind, and then, as visibility returned, she saw the wicked glint in Graham's eyes morph from anger into something more terrifying. "Dad?" she whispered, a fracture of fear running through her. "No!" he roared back. "You have to listen to me. It's all bigger than you can imagine." Claire stood at the edge of two worlds battling within her. Could she trust her father? Was Graham part of this brutal game she hadn't understood? While chaos spun around her, the unthinkable closed in. Claire's heart raced. Could she escape a truth that felt tighter than the walls surrounding her? The pieces shifted. But now, each answer felt like a trap. Would she survive long enough to find out what was really at stake? Claire stood frozen, a whirlwind of emotions and chaos around her. Her father's intense gaze pierced through the waves of fear crashing over her. The air thickened with confusion and the unknown. "Why are you here?" Claire demanded, her heart pounding against her chest. "Claire, we need to go!" her father shouted, urgency whipping through his voice. She could hear the echo of panic reverberate as the black-clad figures advanced, their presence darkening the room even further. "Trust him," Mia urged, her grip tightening around Claire's arm. The crowd surged as people fought for the exits. Chaos consumed them, but Claire's world narrowed down to the faces before her. The flashes of fear and dread felt overwhelming. Graham's tense expression sent chills through her. What was happening? "Stay away from her!" Graham spat, eyes wild. The anger on his face twisted her heart. "Graham!" Claire protested. "Why is this happening?" The masked figure, still reeling from the truth of their identity, stepped forward again. "You don't understand, Claire," they shouted. "This isn't just a fashion line. It's a front for something much darker. You're in deeper than you realize." A loud bang echoed through the ballroom, cannoning into the air like a thunderclap. Glass shattered, and the tension spiked. The exit was now an open maw, panic flooding in alongside strangers. Claire felt the ground shift beneath her, and suddenly a figure lunged from the chaos. It was her mother-in-law, a fierce look on her face as she pushed through the crowd. "Claire," she called, voice rising above the fray. "You have to listen. This is bigger than you all." The truth of her words sat like a stone in Claire's stomach. betrayal wove around her like a noose. "Why should I believe you?" Claire shouted, spinning to face her, desperation clawing at her throat. Before she could take another breath, her mother-in-law let out a choked gasp. "Because I'm the one who brought you into this." The declaration sent shockwaves through Claire, freezing her in place. "What do you mean?" Every fiber in her being fought to make sense of the revelation. Just then, her father stepped forward, his eyes fierce, yet filled with regret. "Honey, there are family secrets, things we kept hidden to protect you." "Secrets?" Claire echoed, confusion swirling wildly. All she wanted was clarity, but now it felt like a door had swung wide open, revealing a terrifying universe. Graham took a step back, fear highlighting his features. "No, you can't be serious." But Claire barely registered his words. Her mind raced with the implications. "You've known?" she shot at her father. "You all conspired to keep me in the dark?" "Claire, it was for your own safety," her mother-in-law tried to reason, desperation tinging her voice. "They would have used you against us." "Used me? Against who?" Before anyone could respond, a figure emerged out of the shadows, moving swiftly, purposefully. It was the masked figure again, but this time they pressed a device into Claire's hand. "You need to activate this. It's your only chance." Her heart raced, confusion and dread intertwining. "What is it?" "Do it!" the figure screamed, urgency clawing at their voice. And then, without thinking, Claire pressed the button. A deafening noise erupted. A surge of blinding light filled the room, washing over everyone, illuminating the chaos in sharp relief. Claire squinted against the brightness, her pulse hammering in her ears. Then the entire space erupted into disorder. The figures that had stormed in froze, faces turning from hostility to shock. In the chaos, something shifted. Without hesitation, the black-clad intruders dropped to their knees, eyes wide in horror, as if they'd suffered a collective blow. "Claire!" Mia screamed, but it was drowned out by the sounds of sirens wailing in the distance. Everything spiraled around her, and time seemed to distort, tossing her thoughts into a wild shuffle. A jolt of realization hit Claire. Their fear was not from her, but something greater, something external that was enacting a terrifying force against them. But there was no time to process. The masked figure's true identity wasn't just a betrayal. It held a connection that shattered everything. "Activate the second protocol," the figure shouted, panic twining in their voice. Just as Claire turned to ask what that meant, the lights flickered dark, leaving an echoing silence. She felt her heart plummet. What's happening? And then she saw it. The wall crumbled as a hidden door swung open, revealing a narrow tunnel behind. Someone shouted, "You have to go now!" But before anyone could move, two piercing red beams of light shot through the darkness, abruptly halting everyone in their tracks. Chaos erupted again, the air thick with shrieks. Claire's heart raced as she looked back at Graham, her father, and her mother-in-law. Their lives were all tangled. Trust was a brittle strand, and now everything was on the line. "Will you all abandon me?" she thought, but the frantic screech of a woman's voice broke through. "Time's running out." In that instant, Claire's entire world was ripped apart. She no longer knew who to trust. Her instincts screamed to run, but the twisted truth gripped her like a vice. All she could do was stand at the precipice, the shadows closing in as her heart raced, confused and terrified. And just as the threshold trembled with secrets begging to be revealed, the brilliance of the lights exploded into an unearthly glow, transforming her perception forever. What had she ac? The light glared, blinding Claire for a moment. She squinted, trying to focus through the chaos. Her heart raced. "There's no time!" the masked figure yelled, pulling at Claire's arm, urgency overflowing. "You have to come with me." The crowd surged, confusion and panic swirling thicker. Claire heard screams mingling with the sirens that wailed outside. She felt trapped in a nightmare. Graham's face twisted in fury. "Don't listen to them," he shouted, but his voice barely cut through the chaos. "Dad," Claire yelled, pulling at her father's sleeve. He had not budged, eyes wide with fear. "What is happening?" "We have to leave, now," he insisted, voice taut, his gaze moving back and forth across the room, watching for danger. That's when the masked figure stepped between them. "They're going to use the chaos against you if we don't move." A tremor of uncertainty coursed through Claire. Every move felt like a step deeper into a tangled web. Questions burned in her mind, but fear paralyzed her tongue. Then, the door behind them slammed shut. Claire's blood ran cold. The villains had sealed them in. The shadowy figures started advancing slowly, a menacing tide. Someone screamed again, followed by the crack of glass hitting the floor. "Go!" Mia shouted, motioning toward the opening. "There's a way out." The masked figure grabbed Claire again, yanking her toward the narrow escape route. With adrenaline coursing through her veins, she followed blindly. Just behind them, Graham shouted after her, his voice filled with desperation. "Claire, you can't trust them!" But all Claire could think about was escaping. The narrow passage spiraled, the air thick with tension. As they hurried through, the walls felt alive, pulsing with the weight of hidden truths. "Why did you have to activate that device?" the masked figure asked, cutting through the rush of panic. "You can't turn back the clock." "I didn't know!" Claire snapped back, instinctively defensive. There was a pause, a pregnant silence. Then the masked figure paused too, dragging off their mask in one swift motion. Claire froze, her breath hitching in her throat. It was Annalise. "What?" The words slipped from Claire's lips, more a gasp than a question. Annalise looked fierce, defiant. "I didn't want you to find out this way. But we don't have time. You're more important than you realize." "More important?" Claire choked on her words. "You've been in this too?" But before they could unravel that, the lights flickered wildly again, and a loud clang echoed from the tunnel. The figures outside hammered against the door. Voices shouted threats, the chaos boiling over. "Keep moving," Annalise urged, pushing Claire forward. "No, stop!" Claire demanded, her voice rising with panic. "You can't just drop this bombshell and run!" But before Annalise could respond, the heavy door burst open. A flood of shadows rushed in, and Claire's heart dropped. "Get rid of her!" a figure shouted, pointing right at Annalise. Unsafe instincts kicked in. Without thinking, Claire stepped in front of Annalise. "No, you can't hurt her!" "She's lying!" Graham yelled, his face contorted in rage. "Claire, she's in on it!" "No!" Claire shouted back, her own voice breaking at the betrayal. "You've been lying forever!" Suddenly, a loud roar filled the tunnel, drowning out any further words. And just then, the ceiling above them began to tremble. Dust and debris rained down. Time stretched impossibly as everyone froze, shock gripping the air. Then, suddenly, the wall cracked, and a blinding light burst through, revealing a hidden compartment behind it. "Go!" Annalise pushed Claire, urgency in her tone. But Claire hesitated, her heart racing as chaos swirled behind her. The glowing light beckoned to her, illuminating secrets she hadn't even known existed. That's when she saw it. A figure stepping out from the glow, face familiar, but so twisted it made her stomach churn. It was her mother. "Claire!" her mother called out. "You need to listen! The truth has to come out now!" "Mom?" Claire trembled. "What truth?" Heavy silence fell, pregnant with fear. The eyes around her widened, shock tightening the atmosphere. The only sound was the chaos outside growing louder, like a storm on the verge of breaking. "Everything you thought was happening, you need to understand the real game," her mother said, determination cutting through the noise. But before she could explain, the walls began to collapse in pieces. "Now!" Annalise screamed, urgency flaring as debris fell. The panic surged. Claire felt herself pulled, eyes darting from her mother's desperate expression to Graham's fiery anger, all while the fear of the unknown gripped her. Would she trust Annalise? Could she face the truth that loomed larger than anything she'd prepared for? As the ground quaked beneath her, Claire felt a shattering sensation. Everything she knew was coming apart. A decision had to be made. But all she could focus on was that blinding light, flickering in front of her, now mingled with shadows that threatened to consume them all. What was waiting for her? Was this truly the end, or just the beginning? The air crackled with tension. Claire felt the weight of her mother's gaze penetrating through the chaos, the fervor in the room thick like fog. She had lived through so much confusion, but now everything felt distorted, jagged pieces of a broken reality. "Claire, you've got to believe me," her mother urged. The walls trembled, shadows creeping closer as panic surged. It was time to act. Behind them, Annalise hesitated, face tight. "We have to move, Claire," she insisted, her eyes darting between Claire and the advancing shadows. But Claire couldn't shake the feeling gnawing at her gut. A familiar voice shattered her thoughts. "Claire!" It was Graham, stepping forward, fists clenched. "Whatever they're saying isn't true. You know me." "Do I?" Claire shot back, flames of defiance igniting. The noise outside escalated, frantic shouts mingling with screams. Her heart sank as she realized the calamity, the danger tightening around her like a noose. Annalise urged, desperation edging her voice while dust motes floated in the flickering light. The thundering footsteps from the dark corner of the room grew louder. Claire could practically feel the fear racing through her veins. She held her ground, staring into Graham's eyes, searching for the truth. Why should I trust anyone? But then something shifted in the air. It wasn't just noise or fear. It was a deeper, pulsing presence. Claire felt the ground shake beneath her. The massed chaos from the shadows lurked closer, like a predator watching its prey. And then, bam! A blinding flash illuminated the darkness, washing over them with fierce, fiery light. Claire gasped, squinting as the debris fell away. The figure staggering out from the glare was someone she never expected. Her heart stopped. It was her brother, Jake. He had been missing for years, lost to shadows, to wild stories of his reckless pursuits. "Claire!" he shouted, voice raw with pain and urgency. "Get away from them!" Confusion twisted inside her. No way this was real. "Jake?" Claire whispered, on the brink of tears. Could it really be him? "He's not who you think he is," he cried, shaking his head as if trying to knock sense into her. "Graham's tangled with dangerous people. You need to listen to me." Graham's face shifted as fear flickered there, his angry facade dissolving. "You don't know what you're talking about." His tone was desperate, yet beneath it was there something genuinely frantic? But Jake continued, faster now, brows furrowed. "They're using you, Claire. There's a reason they've kept you close." The words crashed over Claire, each one a wave of disorienting truth. Before she could digest the impact, voices erupted from the back of the room. "Move!" The figures still advancing shifted. Gunfire crackled through the air, followed by panic. The once confined space transformed into a frantic battlefield. "Run!" Mia shouted, pushing Claire forward. Just then, the realization hit her like an avalanche. Everyone was connected by blood, betrayal, plans larger than her comprehension. But the moment didn't relent. Claire turned to see Graham, face pale, eyes wide with recognition, pointing at Jake. "You were supposed to be gone," he yelled, a tremor in his voice. "Gone? You made sure of that," Jake shot back, anguish boiling over. His voice hardened, filled with a lifetime of hurt and the weight of secrets. "You turned on your own." There it was, the destructive truth. Claire felt the ground shift underfoot, the very fabric of her reality tearing apart. Was this the moment everything spiraled out of control? An explosion rocked the hall, sending them staggering. Dust filled the air. Confusion reigned. Claire stumbled, grappling for clarity. It was all too much. Belief, betrayal, family ties that tangled dangerously into one another. And there, in the haze of dust and chaos, time froze. Graham's expression was no longer one of anger. Underneath it all was fear. Raw panic. But before Claire could unravel it, a deafening crash erupted. The ceiling split above them, and the blinding light surged again, flooding through. "Claire!" Jake shouted, eyes wide. "We have to go! Trust me!" But the implications burned every fragile thread of trust between them. "Go where?" she yelled, feeling the fraying edges of reality slip away. "How can I trust you?" Just then, the light dimmed and shifted again. Time stuttered for a heartbeat as shadows lunged forward from the corners, violent and unnerving. "Now!" someone yelled, urgency cutting through the chaos. But Claire was ready to pull back, to fight, to understand. But with every ounce of hope they had left, another explosion shook the ground. The convergence of light and darkness spiraled dangerously. And as the figures from the shadows closed in, Claire felt herself teetering on the edge of an abyss she could only glimpse. What had she activated? What secrets did it unveil? Fear ripped through her, raw and unyielding. In the tumult of chaos, she realized she was standing at a precipice. Would she leap into the unknown, potentially losing everything? Or would she hold on to the fraying strands of trust that bound them? The air quivered with tension, and in that moment, her future hung delicately, ready to plunge into darkness. The truth would either save or consume them all. The choice was hers, but did she even know what was right?